So I would say this, as much as like I agree, like Psaki at least was a professional, okay? First of all, Jen, and just so the audience understands, when you transition, Jen and Josh Ernst were very kind to me. I wrote about this in my first book. And they treated the transition in a very professional way and said, you know what, we disagree with you, but our job is to make sure you're ready to govern and that you guys are successful. And I'll never forget that. I give them credit for being very professional and helpful, because they were. Jen, for what it's worth, is qualified to do that job. She had served as State Department spokesman. She had been on several campaigns. She had been with Obama. You may not like the answers, and I get it. And I don't disagree.
I accept that there's a resume.
Karine Jean-Pierre is not qualified to do the job.
Talk to me about your old job. We've talked about this a bit before, but when I watch, how long was your stint? It was pretty...
7 months.
7 months. And then then Sarah.
Then Stephanie, then Kaylee.
Right. When I watched the last two, Psaki, who just everything was a lie after lie after lie. And then this one, Karine Jean-Pierre, I mean, it is extraordinary. When you're watching her, are you pulling your hair out like, how the hell could it be this bad? I get it. So, a press secretary, you have to
So I would say this, as much as like I agree, like Psaki at least was a professional, okay? First of all, Jen, and just so the audience understands, when you transition, Jen and Josh Ernst were very kind to me. I wrote about this in my first book. And they treated the transition in a very professional way and said, you know what, we disagree with you, but our job is to make sure you're ready to govern and that you guys are successful. And I'll never forget that. I give them credit for being very professional and helpful, because they were. Jen, for what it's worth, is qualified to do that job. She had served as State Department spokesman. She had been on several campaigns. She had been with Obama. You may not like the answers, and I get it. And I don't disagree.
I accept that there's a resume.
Karine Jean-Pierre is not qualified to do the job.
Yeah.
Okay? And every single day we hear it, we watch it, we see it.
She's a black lesbian, for God's sakes. What do you want?
Exactly. But that's the point, is that this is the new standard, which is what box can you check, not are you qualified, are you experienced, can you do and this isn't like personal. She literally was a field operative before doing it. So if she got sent to the the political affairs office, I'd say, great, that makes sense. She was on John Edwards' campaign. She had done a bunch of races in New York. I get that. She just never dealt with the media before. She wasn't someone who was familiar to them. She doesn't understand the care and feeding. And so it would be like somebody parachuting into, the political affairs job. You'd say, why are you doing that? They wanted her because she checks boxes, and it shows every day. And the thing that upsets me more than that is the way that the White House press corps nods up and down as if what she's saying is A, true, and B, as if she knows what she's doing. They're complicit in this. And that's the thing, is that I couldn't get away with things that were factually true, but they would say, well, technically, the North Star was placed a little. I mean, they were trying to find ways to slice and dice it. With Karine, she blatantly gets up there and talks about the president's policy led to a 90% drop in border crossings. That's patently false. And yet she gets away with it. She talks about the president taking more questions than shouted questions than anyone before. I mean, you could hate Donald Trump and say there's no question. Every day the guy was standing next to him when he won, well, the propeller went off, taking questions for 15, 20 minutes a day. Joe Biden hasn't talked to anybody for that long.
What does that tell you about the people in that room at this point? I mean, they were obviously oppositional to guys like you. Right. They're always going to be oppositional if there's a Republican president. They're not oppositional now, and she's still doing a pretty, I would say, piss poor job.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she's doing exactly the job that
look,
she
I
was
think
hired
part of it
for.
is, remember, if you're on the team, then that's all that matters. Yeah. So she's on the team in several ways, right? She had been working at MSNBC. Her partner works at CNN. Yeah. She is a liberal, so she fits they're not going to hurt her because they know that she's got to end back up at CNN or MSNBC when this is all done, and that's what's going to happen.
Does it ever feel to you like we're in just the show must go on version of all of this? That's what it feels like a lot to me. Like none of it really works. We all kind of know it doesn't work. We know it's all corrupt. I'm talking about politics, media, the whole thing. But it sort of has to continue because if we were to really be confronted with the reality that none of it works, man, it would collapse in a very dangerous way, perhaps.
It's worse than that. Because if you knew how little the government was prepared for certain things, But also, I look at the threat that China poses.
At this point, I'm happy they're not prepared for things.
Well,
they can only make things worse.
But you look at the threat that China poses, the rise of our debt, all of these things, and say it's right there. I get a kick out of this, but there was in the first. There was a scene where Dr. Evil is going after Scott Evil, and he's trying to kill Austin Powers in that first Austin Powers movie. And he sends him down to, I think, be with the sharks. And Scott Evil says, "Can't we just deal? He's right there. We can shoot him. I have a gun." And Dr. Evil says, "No. We're going to put him in the shark tank," where he obviously subsequently escapes. And so many times in government, the solution's sitting right in front of you. You could say, "Can't you just solve that?" And they go, "No. You know what we're going to do? We're going to create a commission, or we're going to create a study." And you're like, you're just punting. And I feel like, whether it's the border, China, the debt, all of these issues, the government just doesn't want to act. And love him or hate him, the thing that I loved about Trump was that he would look at something bad, a trade deal. And I joked about it from the podium, but I'd been the assistant U.S. trade rep under the last 3 years of Bush. And we were told over and over again, well, this it's called being in force. This trade agreement's in force. We can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, we've all signed our names. Trump started to go, "I don't really care. It's a bad trade deal. We're pulling out an NAFTA." And everyone's like, "Oh." And what happened? We ended up signing USMCA. Better deal for Wisconsin dairy farmers, Alabama automakers, over and over again. You go, is that bad? We pulled out of Iran. We pulled out of, we did things, the Paris Climate Agreement, and everyone said the sky is going to fall. When you're not concerned about the fact...
Jerusalem Embassy was supposed to start
World War.
Yeah.
And not only that, but it went from not causing world war to the Abraham Accords, which, allowed for countries that hadn't talked. We have flights going over places. You just came back from there a few weeks ago, where we now have things, but somebody has to be willing to say, "I don't mind, because it's always been done this way. I'm willing to take a chance and do it the other way, or if it's better." And that's not... And this is, I'm sorry, because I'm shameless self-promoter here, but this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. That to explain to people that there are better ways to do it. I watched President Trump do it. I watched the sky not fall. And so, part of as we do this is, and I don't want to bury the lead, but part of the show is we're going to build this all in local, something that you've done. And we're going to have a section where VIPs can tell me, what do we want to hear? What are you guys interested in? What do you think we need more of or less of? And how do you want me to present this? Or who would be a good person to bring in? Or what kind of expertise? And that's the beautiful thing about doing what I'm doing, is that through the locals community, our VIP members can be part of this process and say, "I want to know more about this. Why is the primary and caucus system set up the way it is? Why can't we stop the flow of illegal immigration? Why is..." Whatever it is. I might not be the best person, but I certainly know who is. And that's the other thing. I might, be able to call in somebody and say, "Hey, I keep getting questions from our locals audience that they want to know more about whatever. So let me get, Chad Wolf to come in and explain it from the Homeland Security standpoint, or Tom Homan to come in and talk about it from a border security standpoint." But I think there are things going on, to your point, that it feels like we're just doing something. The debt, this is insane what's going on with our debt. Every year, we keep having the same conversation and saying, "Well, we can't talk about it right now because we don't want to default." But then once we raise the debt ceiling, we forget to have the conversation. Right. And we keep reissuing the credit card and saying, "We've raised your debt limit. Just please kind of don't maybe spend as much." Biden every day talks about more spending. And we're supposed to believe that this guy is going to be concerned about the long-term debt and debt ceiling?
If you're looking for more uncensored opinions from today's thought leaders, check out our media playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.